Hello, everybody. My name is Bruce Montgomery, and this is my colleague, Tracy Priest.
Hello, everybody.
And we're with The Road to Retail. On our podcast, Tracy and I hope to offer tips, insights, ideas, and examples for how small, emerging, and challenger CPG, consumer packaged goods, brands can build their business. Everything from determining if you're ready to grow, where to start, how to prove it online, how to go about securing distribution at a national retailer, driving your business with the end consumer, and how to go about finding an investor if that's important to you. The bottom line is, we would love to help you be successful by highlighting the many important factors that go into establishing and growing your brand.
Bruce and I have been working in CPG commercial operations for over 30 years, working on brands of all sizes. By commercial operations, we mean sales, marketing, trade marketing, new product development, broker and distributor management, new product development, brand M&A, and financing. As a part of our show, we bring our guests that are brand founders and leaders, agencies, Amazon specialists, sales agents, contract manufacturers, retailers, and investors to discuss their experiences and share their insights with the audience.
To keep up with the show, please subscribe to the Road to Retail podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. Leave us a review and consider sharing the show with a friend or colleague that may benefit from the content. You can also check out our website to learn more at www.road2retail.com and follow The Road to Retail on LinkedIn. We would love to have you along for the ride.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Road to Retail, where we interview and talk to our friends and cohorts within the CPG industry. And we have a very awesome guest today. But first of all, Bruce, good to see you.
Tracy, how are you?
I am doing well. So before we jump into today's episode, why don't you tell us about our latest sponsor?
I'd love to. So today's sponsor of the show is Pathfinders Advertising. When considering an agency partner, we'd suggest you consider Pathfinders Advertising. For over 45 years, they've been helping CPG brands with business building, multi-channel campaigns for emerging brands and beyond. They're a diverse group of integrated marketing subject matter experts committed to helping you get the most out of your marketing efforts and dollars. From package design to digital marketing to driving your social media efforts, they're always trying to do things the smart way the first time. And most importantly, Pathfinders will have your back if and when the unexpected arises. They're committed, down to earth, and principled. They work hard, and when you partner with them, Pathfinders will show you how they stay ready to rise to every occasion. There's nothing they can say that will convince you to work with them. All they can do is show you when you give Pathfinders the chance. Learn more or reach out to them at www.pathfind.com. Thank you, Pathfinders. All right, folks, here we go. On today's show, we're very fortunate to be joined by Mr. Paul Vraciu. He is the CEO of Salt Stick. And for those of you out there that are endurance athletes, like a couple of my children, you might be familiar with their products that many runners take before they do crazy things like run marathons or beyond. So, Paul, thank you for your time and welcome to the show today.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Well, that's great. So, Paul, before we jump in with the discussion, why don't you give the folks a little bit of your background on what you've done in your career and how you ended up in your current position? Paul, that question wasn't too intimidating, was it?
Nope.
Are you back?
I'm back.
Okay. Did you hear the question, or should I repeat all that great stuff again?
If you can tee it up again, please.
Okay. Let me find another Titleist 2 in my bag here. Okay, Paul. So let's say, guys, this is live TV, so it just doesn't get any better than rolling here with the Road to Retail. So, Paul, before we get into the discussion around your current position, why don't you just tell the folks a bit about your background and how you came to your current spot there at Salt Stick?
Yeah, so I started my CPG career with Procter & Gamble The first half of my time at P&G was in their food and bev division, back when they used to have a food and bev division. And then the other half was working in their laundry business. And after about 6 years of learning about laundry detergent and stains, I decided it was time for me to do something that I was more passionate about, and that was get involved in the nutrition industry. So I ended up taking a job with Leprino Foods. That moved me out here to Denver, Colorado, and headed up their sales and marketing team for their nutrition business. And while I was at Leprino, I had the opportunity to create Ascent Protein. And as employee number one, that was an amazing experience because I got to build the team from scratch. And we got to build the brand and the product from a whiteboard. And then we got to launch it. And we got to get into the market and figure out what works and what doesn't to make all those adaptations. And then spend a number of years growing Ascent. And then that gave me the opportunity to join the board over at SaltStick a number of years ago. They were looking for somebody with sports nutrition experience who had taken a brand from grassroots and grown that into omni-channel distribution. And so I joined the board a number of years ago. And then about a year and a half ago, came on board full time and have been serving as CEO of SaltStick since then.
Great. Yeah, I don't understand why sports nutrition would be a snappier field than grass stains working at Procter. But there's
handy to learn that, but yeah,
well, there's
more personally passionate about nutrition.
Well, there's also no better training than actually learning all the blocking and tackling that some of the big CPG companies used to do back in the day when that was part of just how you figured it all out. Tracy?
Absolutely. So, Paul, let's talk about a little bit of the backstory of SaltStick. So, a lot of our audience is small emerging brand, founders and leaders. So, tell us about, what gap you saw in the market and how SaltStick, fills that gap, and then also if you did any kind of research to say, hey, I think we're really onto something here.
So the gap in the marketplace, that would go back to when SaltStick was first created. So SaltStick was founded 20 years ago by a really smart gentleman by the name of Jonathan Toker. Jonathan's got his PhD in chemistry. And at the time, he was working at a biotech company while racing triathlons with his pro card. And I don't know how he did all of that, but he did. And through all of that time out there training, he started asking himself the question, well, wait, these electrolyte products that I'm taking, the whole point of that is to replace what I'm sweating out. How well do they stack up? And so that kicked off a multi-month research project for him where he was studying what electrolytes do you sweat out and at what ratios. And that is what actually led to the creation of the first SaltStick product. And that's the foundation of how we do all of our SaltStick products today with a very specific electrolyte ratio of sodium to potassium and calcium and magnesium.
Wow, that's awesome. So was there any other kind of consumer research done or anything like that? Just curious.
Yeah, so it first started with a need. And that's how Jonathan created that. And SaltStick started as grassroots as you can get. So as Jonathan was doing all these races, he was bringing product with him. And he was handing out samples to the people he was racing with. And he was selling it in for distribution at the local run and bike shops that were supporting the races. And what I love about that is that distribution's got to be earned. It can't be bought. And that is just such a foundational piece for any product within sports nutrition because it really has to deliver for the athletes. And that's why that segment is so important for us today, still 20 years later, because of those authentic grassroots where Jonathan started the business. Mm-hmm. And so that was where it started. Now, as far as where we're at today and kind of where we're headed, one of the other big pieces of research that we have done has been around our FastChews product line. So SaltStick has multiple different product lines, and one of those is our FastChews. And just kind of for context, the FastChew, it's a chewable electrolyte tablet. So think about a little piece of clean candy with electrolytes, and you just chew it up. And so when you looked at the results for that product line, it was growing at a 75% clip year after year. And that
Wow.
only happens if something really resonates with consumers. So our job was to go figure out why is it growing at that clip, and then how big do we think that has the potential to be.
That's amazing. Love that story.
Hey, Paul. So the FastChews is a really interesting form across, some other categories in OTC health, whether it's other supplement type products or antacid products. So did you guys focus in on that form because you saw something there, or did you kind of back into it because you're like saying, hey, this is the electrolyte ratio we're looking to deliver? And what kind of chassis might be able to do that if a person doesn't have access to, mixing something in water?
So the reason why Jonathan first created the Fast Chews, it was all about the convenience for consumers. And so it was just a very easy and effective way to get electrolytes into your system. And that's why he first created it, was seeing the need and him being out there on the trails doing all of that. And then our job was then to figure out, okay, how big could that become? And so we did a lot of the standard, online questionnaires that a lot of brands do. And that's great to get quantitative data so you can calculate a size of the prize and you can get a lot of consumer insights. But there is still no substitute for actually one-on-one conversations with consumers. And being an active nutrition brand, we love showing up at athletic events because there you can actually have one-on-one conversations and you can figure out why consumers love it so much, when and why do they prefer a chewable form, how does that benefit them, and all of that kind of helps shape the work that you're doing for the product line moving forward.
So Paul, one of the things I know you guys have just undertaken with great success, talk to us a bit about your package redesign because, prior to, right now I'd say the old saying has kind of morphed a bit. It used to be that your packaging is your 24/7 salesperson, right? Talking to
Yeah.
people at the shelf. I would imagine it now shares those duties with the website, but talk about your package redesign and what you guys really keyed in on and kind of your aha moment to say, this is the direction we need to go.
So you're right. The packaging's got to do a whole lot of heavy lifting. And the prior packaging that we had, while doing some helpful work, we felt like it could do a lot more for us, especially if we were going to expand the brand and take that into retail and try to really get more people to understand the benefits of Fast Chews. And so first off, you got to have the right partner. And so we partner with Little Big Brands. They're a great shop and they really helped us on this one. But it came down to the brief. And so when we were working with Little Big Brands on the brief, we needed to figure out what was that consumer bumper sticker. And this is where some of that consumer research and some of those events really kick in. So I remember being down at the Cincinnati Marathon Expo. And for if you've never seen the Flying Pig Marathon in Cincinnati, it's a great event. They probably have over 20,000 people that do something that weekend. And you've got everything from a 5K to a 10K to a marathon relay to half marathons to the full marathon. And so you got over 20,000 people with a very diverse athletic background. And just with that many people coming through the expo and you're handing out hundreds of samples every day, that's just a lot of opportunities to try different messaging with consumers to see what lands, what doesn't land. And then you can figure out who's engaged. And then you kind of start pulling them in and you start asking more questions. And that just really helped us get down to the best articulation of the benefits for Fast Chews is the fact that it's a chewable electrolyte and the fact that it is fast absorbing. And so those were the two pieces that we really focused on with the package redesign. And that also kicked off some other work that we've really been focusing on as far as how do we quantify the fast absorbing benefit. And that led to a whole clinical study that we can talk about here. But it also led to the articulation of what is so great about this chewable form.
Well, it's interesting. My oldest daughter, the first marathon she ran was the Flying Pig. So I'm one of the few people not from Metro Cincinnati that actually knows what that is.
Impressive.
Tracy,
Yes. So you kind of talked a little bit about the grassroots marketing and getting trial and things like that. But any other insight or something you want to tell us about, getting into bike shops and running stores is not an easy thing. You've really got to build, that street cred. So maybe tell our audience a little bit about, how you guys did that beyond just being at these events and doing grassroots sampling. So any tricks of the trade you could share with our audience today?
Beyond being at the events, one of the other ways that we've really helped partner with those types of stores has been supporting the key initiatives that they have. So, for example, one of the things that's really come back in vogue now are run clubs. It's a
Yeah.
fantastic way that people can take the sport of running and make it more social, and people that might have been intimidated to take on something like a half marathon, now because you get to go out there and train with a group, it becomes more accessible. A lot of these independent run shops have their own local running clubs. And so what we love to do is we love to partner with them, and we like to be able to help provide nutrition support. So if they're getting a group together on a Tuesday night and they're going to go out on a 10K training run, we'll love to be there and to help educate on nutrition and to be able to provide samples so people can try the FastChews product. And so by helping some of the key priorities for those local run shops, that's a way that we have really partnered with that segment and really help grow that partnership that we've got. And it's got at least 1,000 stores now across the country.
That's very impressive. That is not easy to do, and that is a lot of work to partner with all of those run clubs. So kudos to you and your team on that.
so Paul, and maybe this is a spot where we'll talk about your clinical study because Tracy and I interviewed Doug Hall, the founder of the Eureka Ranch, who's arguably the finest new products guy in the last 25 years. And Doug always says, in God we trust, all others bring data. So a clinical studies probably pretty darn powerful. So a two-parter coming for you, Paul. What marketing vehicles do you use aside from supporting the run and bike club universe to get the word out on Salt Stick? And then also, how has this clinical study empowered or given Salt Stick a lot more juice and credibility? Because instead of Paul just telling Bruce, hey, man, it refurbishes you faster than anything, you can say, no, here's exactly why.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's first tackle the clinical and then we can come back to the sampling. So
Perfect.
the scientific literature out there tells us that fast chews are quickly absorbed because it's chewed versus a drink, but it had never been quantified. And that was something that we really wanted to do, to the point about, okay, well, there's some people who want to say, show me the data. So great. We went and funded a clinical study to be able to do that. I'm not an expert and we don't have the expertise on our team to go and do that. So we partner with our scientific advisors. And the key question that we ask them, is there a benefit for consumers taking fast chews versus conventional hydration products? And then they did their thing where they went and they studied the literature that's out there. They figured out how to design a study, and then they went partner with the Western Colorado University and they went and executed it. And the short answer to that question is yes, there's a benefit. If you suck on fast chew for 45 seconds, you can get nearly half the sodium absorbed during that time. Mm-hmm. And for those of you that are competing or doing any bit of athletic endeavor, that speed is really helpful, because if you feel a cramp coming on, the ability to get that nipped right there and get that sodium in your system is huge. Or if you're just starting to feel dehydrated already, you want to get those electrolytes in your system to start feeling better. So that was a big piece that we did to be able to quantify what the benefit is. And then what we love doing is on the website linking to that study. So that way people who say, okay, yeah, we see the headline, but let me see the data. Great. Click on the link, go read the full study, and we invite people to take a look at that. And so that was an exciting piece of work that the team has done over the past year.
That's great.
Excellent. And there's a lot of people out there that want to see the proof, whether it's the individual consumer or as you guys keep growing, getting into retailers when they say, "Hey, Paul, how's Salt Stick different? I already carry like 5 other things in this little section." You can say, "Well, let me tell you."
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about, so you've gone really deep on sampling and bike and run clubs. What other tools are you using to build your brand from a marketing vehicle standpoint?
The number one is sampling.
Mm-hmm.
Is still sampling because we've got a differentiated form. Everybody else out there is either a ready to drink beverage or it's typically a stick pack of powder. And so we want to get our differentiated form in a consumer's mouths. And we just simply call it, we want to put chews in mouths. And that way the consumer can experience the benefits. They can experience how easy it is to consume. They can experience how good it tastes. They can sample any one of the 8 different flavors that we have, and then they can start feeling better really quickly. And then once we do that sampling, then people get hooked. And so we love to show up at athletic events wherever people are sweating. That could be marathons, it could be Spartan races, it could be pickleball tournaments or hot yoga classes, but we love to be at that point of sweat and then figure out, okay, where are the most efficient ways where we can do that? So that way we can scale and rinse and repeat.
Excellent.
That's great. That's great. So, Paul, talk to us about retail. Getting into retail is not for the faint of heart. And so talk to us about what you saw, or what things you saw in the market that said, okay, we're ready to go to brick and mortar retail.
So I think even kind of backing up from there, it's anytime you're going to bring the consumer anything, it's got to be different and better than what they're using today. Otherwise, you're never going to have a sustainable business. And so for us, the FastChews is such a differentiated form that there's 2 main benefits that consumers get to recognize at that point. One is the fast absorption that we now quantify in our clinical. And the second is just the convenience that comes with it. The fact that you don't have to mix anything up. The fact that you don't have to wait for anything to dissolve. You just chew it. And if I think back about my prior experience in other categories that I've worked on, I'm really hard pressed to think about any examples where when you bring the consumer a more convenient form, that always tends to become a major player in the category a couple years down the road. So whether that was protein bars or whether that's Tide Pods, if you can bring the consumer a more convenient solution, that typically becomes a big part of the category. And so we did all of our sizing and we did our size of the prize and we figured out our targeting consumer and where that opportunity is and how much they use. And so as we're starting to think about retail, the first question is consumer fit. Is there a consumer fit within that retailer to make it worth anybody's while? And if you rewind 8-10 years ago, at the time, hydration products within retail, it was all ready to drink beverages like Gatorade.
Yeah.
And Salt Stick at that time was primarily capsules, so it wasn't a fit. But fast forward to today, hydration's become a much bigger category. Much more people understand the benefits of proper hydration, and they're buying those hydration products in a number of places, including retail. And then if we've got a differentiated form where we can bring the consumer something that is different and better than what they're using today, then that's a fit. So that's the biggest question that we look to answer as far as, okay, do we think there's an opportunity there for retail? And then it comes down to the question is, okay, is now the right time? Or is it some point in, further down the road as the brand continues to grow? And then as you're figuring out, is now the right time? We just simply like to ask the question, are we going to help the buyer scorecard or not? Are we going to pull up the average for the category or not? And because we have distribution in other channels, because we are highly developed on e-commerce, because we're in specialty retail, we can compare versus other brands that are in conventional retail. And then that allows us to say, okay, now's the right time.
Hey Paul, when you said a bunch of things that Tracy and I always try to drive home. I mean, one of the ones you said, which is so key, is there a fit, a demographic fit between your product and that shopper base? I mean, we hear things all the time. It's like, well, so and so said they'll give me a meeting. It's like, guys, buyers are supposed to have meetings. The question is, if you're a high end product, if you're a salt stick, do you belong in Dollar General? I don't know. It might not be a great fit. And if you go into Walmart, do you want to test and in 400 stores and prove it works, or do you want to risk it all and go into 4,000 and hit a speed bump? So going in, so let's talk one bit about Tracy and I talk a lot about the order and sequence when you start going into brick and mortar. It's kind of important where you go first and why, right? So talk about how you thought through once you started to get some traction, you've got a differentiated product, you've got some proof points behind you, you've been in business several years, so you're not a fly by night. How did you think about where to go first in traditional brick and mortar? We're going to get to ecom with our next topic, but right here is I really am interested in how you thought through that.
So that consumer fit is so important. And so that's where that quantitative data from the online research to help figure out what channels and where do your target consumers shop. And then for us, what we did is we took that data and we made the choice that for us, we wanted to start in regional grocery because there's some regional grocers out there that have really invested in health and wellness. HEB is a fantastic example. They've got dedicated health and wellness sections within their store. They've got dedicated team members that are knowledgeable and passionate about health and wellness and can help their shoppers find the right solutions. And so that was part of us helping to figure out, okay, there is a consumer fit there. And then the other piece that I love about regional grocery is just the geographic proximity allows you to get your arms around different vehicles to be able to test things in the marketing mix. And so that way you can figure out what is going to move the needle the most. You can test a number of different things and you can go there with boots on the ground and actually see what's moving the needle. And you can stop in store and you can talk with people and how did you hear about this and why? And that helps you figure out what are the marketing levers that are really moving the needle. And that way, when it's time, you can scale more efficiently.
So, folks, one of the things Paul just said, which you've heard on prior episodes with other guests, is if you start in a finite geographic area, I mean, perhaps your product has some regional history. Um, Start in an area that you can really manage. Like Paul said, you can get into the stores, you can do some regional let's just say Metro Boston marketing. And that's something that you can bite that off. You can manage it. You can see what really works. If you end up doing something across 2/3 of the country and you're a smaller firm, that makes getting an efficient spend and return on your cash really hard, let alone the time and tears to manage it. Because sometimes, God bless the internet, but sometimes you still need to show up in person to get things done. Tracy?
Absolutely. Well, two things I wanted to highlight that Paul's mentioned just in his last topic is the ability to test and learn. I really want to point that out to our small emerging brand audience today. Test and learn. He said we tested a bunch of stuff to see what moved the needle. So I applaud you on that. And the other thing, Paul, that you said a couple of times during this episode is differentiation. We're different. We're not, Gatorade. We're not, a hydration stick. This is how we're different and why. And I just wanted to applaud you for that, for that train of thought is
Hey,
awesome.
Tracy, one other thing before you go on. So, folks, another thing Paul said, which is very key, and we've talked about this a lot. Paul referenced, is his product going to help the category performance improve? Remember, every buyer cares way more about their category performance than your brand performance. And if cutting you in doesn't improve what they're already doing, all they've done is create work for themselves and they have another supplier to manage. So always keep in mind Am I building the category? And then it gets back to what Paul and Tracy have said. Your odds of building the category will be increased if you're bringing something different to the market than just a one-off of what's already there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Tracy,
Well said, Bruce. Well said.
thank you. I'm going to enroll my professorship back at Notre Dame as soon as they call me.
I, I
Exactly.
think, and Bruce, that's just so key. And one of the things that we love talking to buyers about is, when you really have a differentiated form, then it's easier for buyers to understand how you're going to help grow the category. So it's not a me too of, oh, we're just looking to switch from this product, this stick pack to ours. It's, no, we've got a chewable form and that is more convenient. And so what that's going to do is it leads to more consumer occasions. And that leads to more category growth. And that's one of the multiple things that's going to help the buyer scorecard there and grow the category. And so much of this comes back to, are you really bringing something valuable to your consumer? Is it different and better than other offerings that are out there in the marketplace today? Because if you've got that question answered, a whole lot of these other things become significantly easier. But if you don't have a truly differentiated product, your path to be able to grow and your path to be able to expand into retail is much, much harder.
Absolutely. So great point. So Paul, talk to us a little bit about the role of your DTC website, Amazon, and then brick and mortar. How do you, look at all those different platforms and opportunities? And then do you have specific SKUs for e-commerce versus retail? So talk to us a little bit how you manage the complexity of all three of those.
They all work together to help serve our consumer. And so typically the people that are going to want more product information, they're going to find us in our own .com. So people that really want to understand the science, like, great, go to saltstick.com, download the clinical, read the full 16-page report if you want. And so that's a fantastic way where people can get depth of product information. And then other things like on Amazon, if people want to explore all different 8 flavors of FastChews, that's a great way to be able to get variety on flavor that you're not going to be able to get in retail because most retailers aren't going to stock all flavors and for good reason. And so, but if people want to experiment and say, okay, let me find my exact one, Amazon's a great way to be able to sample across the rainbow there. And then people that might be looking for convenience then want to pick it up in brick and mortar, or people who want to try it for the first time. Okay, let me go there and let me find a small size offering so I can try it and figure out if this is a new brand that I want to put in my repertoire or not. So they all work together in concert to be able to help to be able to help serve the consumer.
So Paul, one quick follow-up there, because it's an area where we've seen whether they're gigantic brands or emerging brands. Do you have any counsel you would offer to the listeners in terms of trying to control price points across these platforms? Because we've all seen the horror stories where people lose control of pricing because they get excited and they'll cut a one-off deal somewhere and suddenly it's like, what the hell just happened to my pricing integrity?
Yeah, so there's two parts for that. One, we typically like to think about, okay, what's the right packaging format for that consumer and that occasion? So, for example, in the specialty run shops, we have one of the packages we have there is a 10 count resealable. So it's just a little Ziploc pouch. So that way, if people are meeting up at a run shop and they're about to go out on a 10K or they're about to go on something longer, they want to be able to take nutrition with them. And so being able to take multiple servings with them, they've got a little 10 count pack that's resealable that is sweat resistant that they can just slide in their pocket. And so that's the right packaging form for that retailer, as opposed to people that are already huge fans of the brand and love grabbing a couple chews to take with them as they're driving to their Orange Theory class and want to suck on those on the drive. They might want to buy a big bottle on an e-commerce platform to be able to have that and to be able to efficiently kind of pull from that. So a lot of it is figuring out what is the right packaging format for that consumer in that setting. And
No,
then
that's really smart. Be, that's a really smart way to think about it. The resealables I hadn't thought of, and I've looked at your website, so that's really great. So, Paul, what piece of advice would you give an emerging brand founder or leader as they're really just starting to get traction? So they've passed that first hurdle of, is this idea real? They have some traction and possibly their hobby is becoming a business. So what would you say, hey, here's the two things I'd really watch out for?
the two things, first one, keep the consumer at the heart of what you do. There are so many stakeholders when you build a business that it can be so easy to lose sight of why you exist, which is to serve a consumer. Because if you're not doing that, then you're never going to have a sustainable business. And then the second piece of advice is focus on the long term. Brand building is measured in decades, not years, or unfortunately, some people sometimes think months. It is measured in decades. And so to really build a sustainable business, you got to have the right foundation. And that is focusing on the consumer, and that allows you to be able to build from there. You hear people talk about certain brands that might be blowing up, or people see it everywhere and like, oh my God, they just came out of nowhere. And a lot of times, what they don't understand, if you know that brand, or if you know the founder of that and you talk with them, it's like, they don't see the 15 years that they were slogging to be able to get all the things right. And it's like, yeah, it was a 15-year overnight success. And so it is a long-term, it is a long-term journey that people need to be on. And so keeping this consumer at the heart of what you do.
Yeah, so a bad analogy might be it's hard to build a great house with a crappy foundation.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not for the faint of heart, is it, Paul?
Nope.
Well, I love the comment, the 15-year overnight success. Where'd they come from? And it's like, well, let's see, I have three mortgages on my house and I've been divorced twice, so it's hardly overnight success.
Uh,
So, Paul, tell us about who has had the greatest influence on your career and why.
I've had a lot of great mentors over the years. Kevin Burke, Alex Tosolini, Jamie Agasti. One of the people that really made a lasting impact because we crossed paths at a time where I was a first-time manager was Deanna Bass. And I was working with Deanna when I was managing people for the first time. And she was so helpful in helping guide me through that and helping me learn, when am I hands off as a manager? When do I micromanage as a manager? And everything in between. And she really helped drill in the point that, look, whether somebody's your direct report or not, it is your job to develop them. And not just because that's part of your job description, but because that makes a stronger team. And so she was really influential in helping me out as a young manager the first time that I was helping to develop and grow people, and eternally grateful for Deanna for that work.
Love that. That's awesome.
That's excellent. When you think about it, as you get more time in your career, I always think back and it's like every manager you've ever had contributes something, whether that's to the bucket of that is stuff I'm definitely going to do, or that is stuff I'm definitely never going to do. But there's always learnings from everyone who's, kind enough to invest time in you. All right, Paul, the big question. So tell us who your favorite band, brand, or football team are, and why you support them. Can't say Salt Stick. You've already done a great job talking about that. So the floor is yours, my friend.
All right. So top of mind right now when it comes to team is the Denver Broncos. Later tonight is kicking off the NFL draft. So super curious to see where Sean Payton's going to go. A lot of trust in that guy as a coach. He pulled Bo Nixon last year, and so far that's looking fantastic. So really curious to hear what he decides tonight. But been out in Denver for 15 years now, and so rooting for the Broncos.
Love it. Love it. It's going to be an
Well,
interesting night.
they have a very passionate base. I can't remember what the movie's called, but when Sean Payton got caught up in the shenanigans in in New Orleans and had to sit out a year. There's the movie of him coaching his kids' Pee Wee
Yeah.
football team.
Yes.
Awesome movie.
I want to
Just,
say it's like Hometown or something like that.
Yeah,
uh,
something like that, I think. Yeah.
I can't
Yeah.
recall, but as a
Kevin
guy who has
James, I
spent
think, stars in that one.
Yes.
as a guy who has spent way too much time coaching basketball and lacrosse, I always love a good coaching movie. So
Yeah.
Paul, thank you so much for your time today. And before Tracy, our world famous Big Finish, how can people get in touch with you or learn more about Salt Stick?
Hit us up on any of the socials. So find us on any social media channel for Salt Stick and please reach out. That's how you can learn more information about our products. That's how you can get in touch with anybody on the team. And thanks for having me on, fellas.
Awesome.
All right, Tracy. I hope you're loose. The Big Finish.
The Big Finish. Well, Paul, first of all, you were awesome. Great insight. Talked a lot about the things that we've, really emphasized on our podcast. So we appreciate you coming on today. So, audience, thank you for joining us. Please continue to follow us on Spotify, on Apple, also on our website, www.road, the number 2 retail. We post every Tuesday. So look for this episode soon. And thanks again for joining us.
Good luck out there, folks.
Thanks.